doesn't explain why UKIP and your cronies have been with the Russian ambassadors at their embassy and their homes and parties since 2012.
I was asked a couple of months ago, which world leader did I admire? And I said Vladimir Putin as an operator.
The quote was right, the statesman you most admire. And you did it after he seized Crimea.
We have inside the European Union, inside the European family, a fifth column in on ranks. Let's be honest. I call them the cheerleaders of Putin. Farage.
Once upon a time, Britain fought Russia in the Crimean War. But today, some Britons just take their money, in scenes more reminiscent of the movie 300, where the oracles are bribed to bring down Athens.
The former Welsh leader of Reform UK has pleaded guilty to accepting bribes to make pro-Russian statements.
And Nigel Farage made very similar speeches.
And poking the Russian bear is very dangerous.
And the moral of the story is if you poke the Russian bear with a stick, don't be surprised when he reacts.
But why has no one asked if Britain's most famous Eurosceptic was also Moscow's man? Meet Nathan Gill, Welshman, Brexit lover, former Reform UK leader for Wales, but he was also in the Brexit Party and UKIP. And he looks like the type of guy that would be down at Cardiff Market hawking authentic Welsh sovereignty merchandise. And it's not until you get home that you suddenly realise that the merch was made in Pakistan.
Why should I vote for you?
Well, because I'm an honest, decent chap who believes passionately in what I'm doing. Gosh, what's my guilty pleasure? What the heck do I do that I shouldn't be doing?
The former Welsh leader of Reform UK has pleaded guilty to accepting bribes to make pro-Russian statements.
Are you ashamed of what you did? You used your position as an elected member of the European Parliament. Why did you accept those bribes?
Do you regret taking the bribes, Mr. Gill?
Are you sorry? Are you ashamed, Mr. Gill, for taking that money and accepting those bribes?
8 counts of bribery between 2018 and 2019, and the cash came from Oleg Voloshin, described by the US as a pawn of Russia's secret services, and the job: say nice things about Putin's friends and Putin's work. And I'm going to give you an example of one of his speeches, but I'm going to intersplice it with Nigel Farage, who said almost identical things to Nathan Gill.
Thank you very much. An association agreement is a halfway house between a trade agreement and EU membership. This is Ukraine's second attempt at an association agreement. The first attempt led to the overthrow of the democratically elected pro-Russian president and the current civil war which we have now in the Ukraine.
Now, just to continue with that, today we are rushing through an association agreement at undue speed with the Ukraine, and as we speak there are NATO soldiers engaged in military exercises in the Ukraine. Have we taken leave of our senses? Do we actually want to have a war with Putin? Because if we do, we're certainly going about it the right way.
1, 2, 3.
Nigel talks about losing your senses, but he has lost his logic for decades. Russia and Norway have a border. Norway is in NATO and regularly hosts UK and US troops. Norway has a very similar association agreement with the EU, titled the EEA, the European Economic Area. It's an association agreement, and Nigel loved that.
Wouldn't it be terrible if we were like Norway and Switzerland, really? They're rich, they're happy, they're self-governing. Actually, Norway can afford to give people money. It's rich. It's successful. Norway. They're rich. They top the world's happiness index. They're allowed to catch their own fish.
So why isn't Nigel making a huge fuss about Norway hosting NATO troops and being on Russia's border? It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
With Putin up in his rhetoric, where is this going to end? The Ukraine is a buffer zone between NATO and Russia. The EU is taking away this buffer zone, potentially putting NATO tanks on the border with Russia.
Amongst the long lists of foreign policy failures and contradictions in the last few years, including of course the bombing of Libya, the desire to arm the rebels in Syria, has been the unnecessary provocation of Vladimir Putin. This EU empire, ever seeking to expand, stated its territorial claim on the Ukraine some years ago. Just to make that worse, of course, some NATO members said they too would like the Ukraine to join NATO. We directly encouraged the uprising in the Ukraine that led to the toppling of the President Yanukovych, and that led, of course, in turn to Vladimir Putin reacting.
What you are doing today is throwing petrol onto the bonfire that the EU lit. Putin is not the biggest threat to our civilization. The biggest threat is Muslim extremists.
Perhaps we ought to recognise that the West now faces the biggest threat and crisis to our way of life that we have seen for over 70 years. The recent beheadings of the British and American hostages graphically illustrates the problem. And of course we have our own citizens from our own countries engaged in that struggle too. In the war against Islamic extremism, Vladimir Putin, whatever we may think of him as a human being, is actually on our side.
Funny how he suggests that Putin is on our side. I don't think he's on anyone's side. He is on his own side. He is his own team. And the reason I can be so sure in that is because on 2 occasions he's dumped chemical weapons across the south of England.
Scotland Yard is investigating the suspected poisoning of a Russian dissident living in Britain.
When he collapsed under the influence of an unknown substance 14 years later, it happened out of the spotlight in the back streets of a quiet English cathedral city.
And Farage is sat there going, he's the guy I look up to, and he's the guy who's on our side.
Well, there are no cordons here anymore. The major incident that was declared is now over, and the hospital is back to being fully operational. But it wasn't just the 2 people at the centre of this incident that were brought here. A number of people from the emergency services also received treatment, and at least one of them stayed here overnight.
This is for political reasons, and poking the Russian bear is very dangerous.
And the moral of the story is if you poke the Russian bear with a stick, don't be surprised when he reacts.
For this reason, UKIP voted against this agreement.
I suggest we grow up. I suggest we recognise the real threat facing all of our countries, communities and societies. We stop playing war games in the Ukraine.
Farage and Gill are on the same stage, using the same language, the same defence of Putin, and the same lacking of logic. But one of them took money, and the other one says he didn't, except he did because he took it from RT.
And RT is run by and controlled by an organisation which is called TV Novosti, and TV Novosti is funded by the Kremlin.
Anybody else in your party share his views?
This constant eastwards expansion of the European Union, coupled to the fact they are now building a European Union army, worries me. We are back in a Cold War. We're back in shadow boxing. Whether Putin is a threat or not, let's please stop poking the Russian bear with a stick. It simply doesn't make sense.
And what I said was he'd outwitted and outclassed you all over Syria. I also said I didn't like him as a human being and I wouldn't want to live in Russia.
But
what I want us to do, let's not meddle.
Let's not meddle. Hang on, just before you go on, you did actually say you admired him.
As an operator, not as a human being.
The question was, which current world leader do you most admire? As an operator, I would say Putin.
Our constant desire to expand the European Union and NATO right up to the borders of Russia, something, by the way, that George Osborne and David Cameron were the biggest cheerleaders for, has been a geopolitical error. Because if you poke Russian bears with sticks, guess what happens? They actually snarl and bite back. The ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union was giving this man a reason to his Russian people to say they're coming for us again and to go to war.
But you were echoing him.
I was... Sorry.
You were echoing him. That's what Putin says.
No. Sorry, I've been saying this actually since the 1990s. Ever since the fall of the wall. But hang on a second. We've provoked this war.
The message from Farage is always the same, and it's the same from Gill. The West is the aggressor, Putin is misunderstood, Ukraine is to blame.
We ourselves in the European Union provoked the conflict through our territorial expansionism in the Ukraine. We poked the Russian bear with a stick, and unsurprisingly, Putin reacted.
You can like or dislike Vladimir Putin, and I wouldn't want to take him to see my mum for tea on a Sunday afternoon, I've got to tell you. But he is a very canny, very sharp, very clever, political operator.
He's trying to lay out that Putin is some misunderstood patriot of the West. Yet Putin has invaded Chechnya, Georgia, Crimea, the whole of Ukraine, flattened cities in Syria. He's used chemical weapons twice on British soil, but yeah, he's got to be misunderstood. Putin kills journalists. He arrests pop stars. He imprisons opposition leaders and poisons them. He poisons critics. This isn't strength. This is terror. This is a dictatorship with a flag. And yet Farage sits there and says...
I was asked a couple of months ago which world leader did I admire, and I said Vladimir Putin as an operator.
Farage says that Putin is on our side against Islamic extremism, but how does he know that? Has he had conversations with people in the Kremlin? Has he had conversations with Putin? Was he told that by Nathan Gill? Probably not, but I'm just asking questions. But it gets even more bizarre because Farage tried to distance himself from Nathan Gill, and quite frankly it was an absolute car crash.
Obviously what he's done is appalling and totally unacceptable and treacherous. That is abundantly clear to anybody watching this programme and to all of us at Reform. But I go back to the original point.
Anybody else in your party share his views?
Whose views?
Nathan Gill's views.
No, again, I've never the first time I'd ever heard his name or seen his name was in news reports. This is somebody who was active in what was an extremely nascent party at the time, many years ago. I've never spoken to him. Most people in the senior leadership team have never really even heard of the guy.
Well, viewers have just seen pictures. Sorry, let me just explain. Let me just, in fairness, let me just be fair to you, because you can't necessarily see what's going out on screen. We've just shown our viewers some pictures of Nigel Farage with his arm around him, holding a union flag. They obviously knew one another pretty well.
Well, I don't think, whatever that footage is, Nigel meets tens of thousands of people.
It's pretty funny how the BBC trolled Zia by showing those clips of Nigel with Nathan Gill. It's pretty funny. However, here's Nigel talking about Nathan Gill.
But in particular, it's a big victory for Nathan Gill, our leader in Wales, an honest, decent, honourable man who's been loyal to me and the party at all times. Nathan, you've led UKIP Wales into this, and well done, you.
And here's Nathan wishing Nigel Farage a happy birthday, aka Mr. Brexit, aka his friend.
On an annual basis, ultimately, and you know he can't be held accountable for the actions of every single person whom he comes into contact with. But of course, look, given he has pleaded guilty, I have no concerns at all in telling you that is atrocious behaviour, and we condemn it. But again, I've never met the guy. Reform is a very nascent political party. And in the end, what we've got to stick to are the issues that matter to British people. And smearing Reform, calling Reform voters names, calling us racist.
Yes, that's it. Twist onto a different topic that's completely unrelated to the fact that you've had a Russian spy in your midst since 2018 up to about 2021, and they were best mates with Nigel Farage, your party leader, who I've shown throughout this video has been saying verbatim the same things that Nathan Gill has said, which make zero logical sense, but also seem to repeat exactly what the Kremlin would want you to say. And finally, someone confronted Reform about this on Question Time, but the BBC shut it down as a conversation topic.
Zia said that Nigel Farage and Reform did not know who this man was. But Nigel Farage, including the day after Brexit happened, was pictured with 4 men behind him. One of them being former MEP for Reform, Nathan Gill. The man that Zia says no one knows who he was. So were you lying, or was Nigel Farage lying?
Zach, I'm afraid, if you want to use the word lie, let's be clear about something. You are lying. What I said is I have never met. I took over as chairman in the summer of last year. I will tell you, I have never met Nathan Gill. Most people in the senior leadership team have never really even heard of the guy.
Nigel Farage in the picture, or was he not?
Okay,
I tell you what, hang on a minute.
This is about
everybody there in the audience. Can I just say, people in the audience, hang on, Izzy. I appreciate you both feel really strongly about Nathan Gill, but I can see that people in the audience are going, you know, I'm not sure this is going to make an enormous
bribery from Russia.
Right, okay.
And for the party of free speech,
when we're in power, you will be able to say whatever you like.
If you believe in free speech, you have to allow people to say distasteful things.
And yet they're threatening legal action because Welsh Labour have been pointing out that this man who's running for Reform as leader of Reform's party in Wales is deeply connected to Nathan Gill, with even suggestions that he may have taken bribes from Russia. And going back to those pictures that the BBC used to troll Nigel Farage hanging out with Nathan Gill, there were a few pictures they omitted. This is a picture of Nigel Farage hanging out with Nadia Borody, and she's married to this guy, Oleg Voloshin, who bribed this guy, Nathan Gill. And then there's the video clip you saw at the very beginning.
Doesn't explain why UKIP and your cronies have been with the Russian ambassadors at their embassy and their homes and parties since 2012, does it?
I've never... Jason, I'm sorry, mate. I mean, I know this is all great fun, but I've never, ever been to the Russian embassy.
Really? Because that's a Russian ambassador, and according to the Embassy for Russia website, they're saying that you met with Russian Federation Alexander Yatvenyenko, and you were discussing a Russian-UK bilateral agreement. And considering Nigel Farage wasn't actually an MP at this point, what was he doing meeting with the Russian ambassador? What was in this agreement? And why was he trying to represent the UK, even though he was nowhere near Westminster? Farage, Putin and Trump all have it in for the EU, all want it to be demolished. They are an axis of evil. They dream of Europe being split into 30 or 40 tiny states, each with their own borders, laws and currencies. That's economic suicide. And the only ones benefiting? Russia and America. And yet Nigel Farage wants to become Prime Minister of Britain, a mini EU with Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland and the overseas territories. But that's not how I feel about this. How I feel is Nigel Farage is weak. He's waving the white flag. He is the Trojan horse coming inside Britain's castles. He's offering a plan no better than a complete delusion, and some are so poor, so desperate, they're willing to accept terms, even though it's a surrender, a capitulation, and behind all of it is someone no better than Ramsay Bolton, a Vladimir Putin, or a Donald Trump. Let me know your thoughts, both on this video and Nigel Farage, as well as my Reek comparison. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, it helps the video no end. If you'd like to know more about how fear is used to control the population, you might like my book, Manufactured Fear, available on Amazon. And once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of my Patreon and YouTube subscribers. You keep this channel going and growing. Once again, thanks for listening. Bye for now.